Okay, greetings, welcome. Today I'm going to be building an antenna system. I've already been using the same antenna system that I plan to rebuild. It's the 4080 Fan Dipole, and it's a pretty basic antenna system, and these are the dimensions that we're going to be using. So we've got the 40 and the 80 Fan Dipole, and if you look at that, we've got the 80 metre. The full length is 130 feet, which is equivalent to 39.62 metres. We're going to split the two legs into two, so we're going to have two 65 feet legs, which is half of the 130, or that will work out to 19.81 metres. Two lengths there, two elements either side, and then below that we're going to have the 40 metre fan in an inverted V configuration. That will be 66 feet total length, so we're going to split that in two again, two elements, so we've got two elements of 33 feet. So that's equivalent to 20 metres 11 for the full length, and the two elements will work out at 10.06 metres. And then if you look at the little drawing, that's the basic configuration of a fan dipole. So you've got your top element up here, which is your 80 metre dipole, and below it is the inverted V 40 metre one. Obviously this is not representing the full length, this will be a lot longer. So that's the situation. There's the dimensions and sizes that you can have a look at and make a mental note of, and what we're going to be using. So I've got some decent feeder. This is a bit of military spec coaxial cable, decent stuff. It's what the military use. It's stainless steel rather than copper braided, and pretty good for weather resistance. Really decent PVC coating on it. Pick this one up, not particularly expensive, nice and light, so it's a thin lightweight coaxial cable. 50 ohms, so that's what we're going to be using. Obviously we need some connectors, so I've got a couple of these to solder on the ends. Make sure you've got the right size. So we're going to be soldering two SO239s or PL258, whatever you want to call them, cable connectors. And then we'll need four of these, so we need four insulators. They call these I think they call them forgot what the correct name for them is, but basically they're antenna insulators, dipole ends. I might call them eggs or something like that, I forgot now. But this is what I've picked up. So I've got this one via the internet. It's a Balan, it's a 50 ohm Balan, and it's made by Diamond. It's the BU-50A, and it's a high power version. So pick this up, it was about £30 or 38 pounds I think, the cost, 39, something like that. I can't quite remember the exact pence, but it's a nice piece of kit, well constructed. I had a quick look at it, researched it, so that's it, a close view there. Inside there we've got the 1-to-1 Balan, and it's accessible via the back plate. I had a quick look at one which had been opened up. Looks pretty well made, and the idea of this Balan will stop any unwanted signals radiating down my feed line. They'll just be focused through the two elements of the antenna system, and also it stops unwanted reception of electrical interference, which can be picked up from any electrical equipment and can be received via the coaxial feed line, causing high noise levels. So the whole reason why I'm installing this Balan is to try reduce the 80 and 40 noise level on the dipole. So that's what we're going to be using. So we're going to get busy. I've got one more thing to show you, which is the wire. We've got this special antenna wire cable, which again is designed for military use. It's a good bit of gear, not very expensive. Cost me about less than £10 for a 50 metre reel. I've got 3 of these reels, so I'll probably be using just one on this particular antenna, or maybe one in a little bit, depending on how we go. So that's what we're going to be using. It is green, so it's a nice stealthy colour. Shouldn't be too difficult to disguise in the garden. That's the plan. The diameter is 2.5, and it's multi-stranded, and we've got 32 cores, 2mm conductor, and it's made for SOTA BEAMS. I got it from SOTA BEAMS, this, and it is what they use for military spec antennas again, so hopefully it'll be pretty substantial. So we're going to start building it up. The weather's not great, so I'm not sure how far I'm going to get today, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be using a little bit of hand tools as well, so I've got my soldering kit out ready on standby. set of wire strippers, we've got some pliers in there, we've got soldering iron, insulation tape, bit of solder, various other goodies, so that's going to come in handy. I'm probably going to solder the lugs on, and the lugs, by the way, there'll be, I've got some lugs in the bag. Let's have a quick look. They come with a couple of lugs, so we've got a couple of lugs in there which will be attached to the end of the elements, but I've got a couple more which I'll be adding on, because I'm going to be putting two sets of elements on, one for the 80 metre and one for the 40 metre. So we'll see how it goes. So that's where the 40 metre element's attached, and the 80 metre element's on top of that telegraph pole. And I'm going to have to obviously follow these lengths, that's the plan, and they go up to that point up there, which I have it hooked up to the bottom of my vertical antenna. And there's also my 1090 megahertz aircraft antenna as well. So I'm going to and then I'm going to follow it, and obviously the antenna is going to be rematched the same length as what we've got up here, and that antenna runs all the way down right to the bottom near the beam. Including these guys. So yeah, they're out as well, having a bit of fun, enjoying the weather. It's not great weather, but it'll do. What are you saying? Yeah? So as you can see, that's how the antenna is in the centre. I'm going to be lowering that, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the wire out above the elements to get size. But it'll be a lot easier for me to just follow the same pattern, the same length, because I know that the resonance. Situation. I do have it terminated into a coaxial choke, so shall I say that it's fed with some heavy coax into this 50 ohm choke, and then that's some of the military spec cable which I've already been using, and then that runs to the dipole centre, which is just up there like that, as you can see. So getting a few pictures, I'll try to zoom in a little bit, give you a closer look at it, and that's just a basic simple dipole centre without any Balan, and that's been working pretty good. However, I do believe we have been getting quite a bit of noise coming back down the feed line. I'm outside now, I'm about to start taking the dipole down, and as you can see I've got this pole at the bottom of the garden, and that's where the dipole terminates, the leg of the 80 metre one, and also the delta loop is connected to it, to these trees. That's the lower street behind us there, so just going to disconnect this, and we're going to take it from there. So it's just staked into the ground, and it's a wooden insulator that I put in, and it goes quite high up. It's low enough to miss the beam, which is obviously close by, and then the delta loop, should I say, that's just there, and that's going at that tree. So anyway, we'll get this one disconnected, and I'm going to run the wire down the full length to get a replica length. So I've got the antenna down now, and what I've done is I've just slipped some of the new cable through the old insulator, and I've just taped it on there. So I've marked the length that I want, so that's the exact length of the element with that bit of tape on there, which will easily come off. I've got a little bit of extra on there so I can tie it off like I've tied that one off previously, and now I'm just going to follow this cable down and match it easy enough by sliding it like that. I'm going to do that twice. Complete length, the full 130 feet, and then I'm going to obviously make two of these, which will be 60, I think 65 feet a piece, and that'll be the 80 metre one taken care of, and then I'll do exactly the same technique with the 40 metre lengths. Much easier. Obviously I've measured them out previously, and I have adjusted the length to get the resonancy. And it's at the moment it's resonant on 3.750 1:1 at this particular length, and at the 40 metre one I noticed it was about 7.200. So I'm just going to make that one slightly longer this next time round, and that will make the resonancy drop down to a more usable part of the band. So that's the situation so far. It's going okay, and the sun is actually coming out very nicely. So I've managed to follow that back now, and I've actually put a bit of insulation tape to measure the length off. That's perfect. I am going to have a little bit of extra length coming down, because I'm going to tie that back and then loop that back over to the new connector with the lug on. So that's how it's going so far. So yeah, easy enough. And now I've just got to run it back now and do a second one. So I've got two elements for 80, and then repeat the process for the 40 metre one. And As you can see, the wires are just laid together, and it's easy enough just to follow the pattern. So I've ended up coming all the way down the length twice, and that's where I've got the two marks. So that was a pretty good method of getting two equal lengths. As you can see, they're very similar lengths now. So that's the full stage of that part complete, and we've just got to chop it now, and we've got two elements cut for 80 meters. Right, so it's 40 meter time now. So I've got the insulator off the 40 meter antenna down, and I've marked up again the length that I'm after. This time I want it slightly longer because it was a little bit high resonant frequency. So I'm going to copy the two existing lengths, so this one, and then I'll have all my elements made, and I can start soldering things up. So I'm just gonna line the wires up and follow them down again, and just complete the exact same length as last time, but add a couple of inches on to make the SWR a little bit lower. So one reel's done 1.5 elements, so shall I say one complete 80 meter dipole set and half an element of the 40 meter. So I've just got to get another reel out and cut off another 40 meter half, and we've got that job sorted. So everything's in place, just tied up temporarily. I'll just grab another reel and we'll continue. So there's my second reel. It's that's the stuff close up, that's the specifications. We're going to just unravel that and join that one on, and then the job's completed. I'll be on to the assembly. So yeah, it's dinner time, guys. And you'll be getting your dinner as well, don't worry. And you, mate, don't you worry. Yeah, mine's looking good. Yeah, so I'll just break for a bit of lunch, feed the dogs, and then I'll make the second element for the 40 meter one, and then I'm going to be soldering everything up. So I'm inside now. I've got my lengths cut. I've got 4 elements to attach, 2 80 meter ones and 2 40 meter ones. So I've got my soldering iron out, it's getting warmed up, all my equipment laid out. So all that's left now is to cut the end of the wires, tin them. I'm going to be using my strippers to do that, and then I'll crimp on some plugs using the crimping tool, and then we'll just put a bit of solder on there just to make sure that everything's connected properly. So that's the situation, the state of play, as it were. So I'll just get a little close up and show you what the stuff is. So I've got my wires, what I want to do. So I'm going to start off with a 40 meter one. I'm going to strip the end off using these wire strippers. So I'm going to set the clearance on that, make sure that I don't cut into the cable, damaging it. And then put my stripper and tool on, give it a quick turn, and a good pull, a little bit tighter, a little bit harder next time. So yeah, good quality insulation, and as you can see, stainless steel coated wire, looking pretty nice, good quality stuff. I'll just get a close up for you there. Hopefully we're getting a focus on that. So multi-strand cable with a nice stainless coating, so that's going to stop it from corroding. So that's my first 40 meter element one cut and stripped. So I'm going to do this 4 times, obviously, get them all the same sort of length. Always the first one's always the tricky one, because you don't want to overdo it and cut into the wire. But it's set okay, so good to go. So yeah, easy enough with the right tools. So that's that wire. This is the final 4th wire. Strip this one, and then we're going to put a bit of solder on them. Got the daughters in the kitchen, they're doing a bit of play-doh, enjoying themselves, got a bit of time outside. So that's that taken care of. So now I'm just going to put a bit of solder on, and we'll get it soldered up and tinned. So best bet for this is to get your wire in position. I've used a pair of pliers there all day, make sure that they're twisted. I'm just going to put a bit of moisture on my soldering sponge, which is this piece of kit here. This is just to wipe my iron on. It's seen better days, but it'll be fine. And it's a case of cleaning your iron before you start. Make sure you've got the iron nice and clean. So I'm going to start off with a tinned iron, which means putting a bit of solder onto the soldering iron before we commence the operation. So make sure I've got plenty of length. Got a couple of types of solder. I've got some thicker old leaded solder here, and then I've got some more up-to-date lead-free solder, the 2 types. So just got to be careful you don't do any damage. So Just check the iron's hot, and then it's a case of laying the wire against the blade of the iron, running a little bit of solder, travel the wire up and down the full length of the body of the wire, and that just basically transfers solder to the iron, from the iron, right at the end of the iron, so it transfers it onto the wire, and that's how you tin a wire. And that's, I'm going to do that 4 times, and that'll be easy enough to do. I'll show you another one. So I'll just use the pliers to hold that and manoeuvre that out of the way. That one's done. We'll look for this next 80 metre wire. I don't want to get everything tangled up here, so this is the one that we want now. Move that out of the way. Get my pliers in just to make it into a more comfortable, accessible position. Clean the iron on the mat, make sure it's got a good clean head. Another thing to check, make sure you've twisted it up fully so you've got no stray bits sticking out. You are actually transferring a bit of grease off your fingers onto the cable, which is not ideal, so make sure you've got clean fingers when you do this operation. And like I said, you can just touch the solder to the wire and move the blade of the iron up and down, and that's an easy, quick tinning job. So that's 2 wires done. Do that 4 times on each element, and you're onto a good start, so you can connect it to the terminal of the lug and make a permanent attachment. So that's the 3rd one done. I just paused it there. I'll just show you the last one, then you can see it from various different angles of how I'm tinning it. Nothing too complicated. So if you're new to soldering, obviously get your blade of your iron, place it to your wire, and then just dab a little bit of solder, move the iron up and down, transfers a little bit of heat and a little bit of solder at the same time, and this is what we call tinning. T-I-N-N-I-N-G, tinning, using the solder. So that's all 4 wires now tinned, ready to be fed through the Balan. And once I've fed it through this here Balan, I'm going to connect it to these 2 terminals. So that's our next job. So we'll feed it through these circles, these entry points, cable tie it off, and then loop it, one on that side, one on that side. Each side will have 2 wires coming off. One will be for the 80 metre antenna, and one will be for the 40 metre inverted V. So we'll have a flat top and an inverted V, and that's going to be what's going on next. So what we're planning on doing, I think I'll probably do the 40 metre one first, it makes sense. So that's the smaller length. So I was planning on putting the wire through the Balan like that, and then I was going to take it to the tape because that was the length that I wanted, and then I was going to cable tie that and insulation tape tie that off, and then from that will then feed back round into that position and hook up onto that point there. So that's what we're going to do now. So that's exactly how I want it. I'm going to keep that tape, line that bit of tape up there, and then I'm going to get some more insulation tape because I'm going to use a combination of insulation tape and cable ties. So start off with the insulation tape, close that together, and once you see me do this first one, you'll realise what I'm trying to do. So it's a case of nipping the 2 wires together, keep them close together, wrap that round a couple of times, get a decent adhesive taped connection. Take that off, we could cut it, okay, breaking it off. So that's now pinned that in position for me. I'm going to put cable ties around that, and that is going to attach onto there like so. So this is the bottom section, that's going to be the inverted V part, one section of it. So that's why I decided to do that first. So I'm just going to tape them for starters before I put the final cable ties on. So that's 1/2 done for 40. We'll get the other one, because I put these insulation tape points on when I marked it off, it's going to be easy to make sure that each length is going to be the same. I did that outside, if you remember. So feed that one through there. We're going to take it exactly the same to the back, and then we're going to loop that round like that, and then we're going to do exactly the same. So line that up with the tape mark so we know that the element's the correct length that we want, and then we're going to just hold them together and do exactly the same with the insulation tape. And mark that off. Keep them close. Once you've got your first lap, as it were, first turn, quite easy to just twist the reel of the insulation tape to the body of the tape, and it gives it a good tight snug bonding. So I'll break that off, and now we've got two elements connected. So I'm going to obviously put cable ties on, so they're going to go like that, but I'm waiting until I've attached all four elements, because I'm going to solder both wires into two plugs. Rather than having four plugs, we're just going to have the two connecting plugs. So that's part one, and we'll just continue doing that now with the 80-metre one, exactly the same. So this time I'm going to take it to the top side of the entry point. Again, go to the insulation cable mark, which I previously located, which is that bit there, because I know that's the correct length. Bring it back nice and close, exactly the same technique which I've just done. Bit of tape just to pin it how I want it. And then I will be putting the cable ties on this one as well. But you're getting the general idea of how it goes. And this is for the Fan Dipole 2-element antenna. So that's another one done. So now you'll be able to see and get the better idea of what I'm trying to explain to you. So we've got the two elements there. That's the 80. This one is the 40. And they're both going to link together. I can trim that to a more, if I need to. I'll probably leave it as it is, to be honest, it'll be fine. And they're going to get soldered to a lug, and they're going to attach to that point there, and that's one side of the antenna already built. So hopefully you can see that okay. Just move my hand out of the way, and that's how that's going to work. So that's going to be cable tied there, probably a couple more, and then we've got a fixing point if we wish, but mine will be suspended anyway. It's not particularly heavy, so it should be good. So I'll just get on with the next one now, and we'll be all good to go again. So I'm just going to move this wire over here so we don't get any tangles and bits of confusement taking place. That's for the 40, and we'll bring the other 80-metre dipole wire to this side, and this will be a bit easier to deal with. So same again, bring it through, line it to the insulation tape which we marked it, double it off, and we've got another roll of joining to do with the tape. Almost finished now. We're almost to the fun part, which is soldering. Well, it's all pretty good fun, but I do enjoy the soldering part particularly much. It's my favourite bit of the making of the antenna. But this hasn't been too bad. Obviously the thinking was all done last time when I built the prototype using some old wire, which was insulation wire, which was a bit of electrical cable and a bit of antenna wire from an old previous dipole antenna, which had seen better years. So that's going to link up there nicely, as you can see. That one's going to link with that, and they're both going to connect to that point, and these two wires are going to connect to that point. So we've now got the four elements in place, so it's a case of doing a bit of soldering now and cable tying. So that'll be good. So I've got the wires. I've got a choice. I can either use these small lugs, which I planned on using originally, which they will slide over, quite snug fit, they'll slip on. I could solder those on and crimp those on, or I could go with the manufactured supplied lugs, which are these larger diameter lugs, where I can get two wires easily inside the lug like so, which will then cut out extra connections. So I'm going to probably go for that. I have got a crimping tool over here, so this is a crimping tool. This works with a colour code. As you can see, you've got yellow, blue and red. So we'll select the yellow, put the crimp into the yellow part. That gives you just enough tension to crimp the job properly. So really easy. I'll show you it again, but that's the proper tool which does a really decent job. So that's one completed. We're going to put a bit of solder on it as well, because I know people will disagree and say you don't need it, but personally I like it. So it's what I like, it's my antenna. I'll do it how I want to do it. So here's a second crimp. So I'm going to put it on exactly the same technique. You can see the solders on the wire. It's tinned. So I'll give you a close up, you can, hopefully it'll focus up. And there is the solder on the wire, ready tinned from previous. So we're just going to slide these two wires inside the lug, like so. Make sure, as we say, they're fully home. So make sure both wires are visible, which they are. So now again, get my splendid crimping tool, make sure it's open on the yellow one. So there's the colour code again. You see the colour code, yellow, blue and red. So it's a case of dropping the crimp into there, lining it up. I'll try and make sure you can see it working, and then it's a case of putting the pressure on, and that crimps it absolutely perfectly every time. So just taking a little bit of time to focus in, but there you go. So very nicely crimped, or not too bad anyway. I might actually just do that one again actually. It's a little bit, it could be better. So I brought it down to the next level, and that's a lot tighter, so much better. First crimp was a little bit off, so looking good. So now go back to my original system with the pliers. Now I've got to take a bit of care because there's quite a bit of wire about. I don't want to do any stray soldering or damage, so I'm going to use the pliers to assist my holding of the old lugs in place. So now bring the soldering iron down, wipe it on the sponge, ensure that the tip of the iron is clean. Put the flat blade, it's not the easiest position, I've chosen an awkward position, but it'll be okay. Get the flat blade in there. There should be a little bit of melting from the existing tinned wire. Not the greatest example actually. I'm just going to reposition that a little bit better. Try it at that angle, that will be better. So I can get the heat in there better now. I can feed the solder in there much easier, using gravity as my friend rather than my enemy. And the lug's taking a bit more heating up because it's quite a piece of substantial bit of aluminium, taking a bit of melting. But nevertheless, we've done it. Bang plenty of solder on. My motto, especially on these things that are going to be outside. So that's well and truly soldered up. Plenty on that one. Obviously that's going to be particularly warm, so we've got the finished product. Not the neatest of jobs, but I'm going to be taping it all up anyway. So let's get this one in position and see if we can see this one a little bit better when I do this one. That's the best example. So I don't want to damage the wires obviously with the pliers. Get it to a position where you might be able to see what's going on. Bring the iron out, wipe it on the sponge, get the body of the iron to the flush with the actual lug. Take care not to melt anything that you don't want to melt unnecessarily. Keep the solder close by, waiting for the heat to transfer from the iron, which you should shortly see. And once you get that heat, the solder will start to run. It takes a few seconds because it's quite a big lug, like I said earlier. I have got a particularly small tip on this iron. I've got a much heavier soldering iron, which is probably better for the job, but this will do. It just takes a bit longer, that's all. We'll be getting there shortly. Put a little bit of heating from the front end. Get a little bit of solder melting. A little bit of fresh solder does actually always assist in getting it to melt because you've got a bit of flux on there. So as you can see, it's running. I've got it to the blade. The blade's hot enough now. The blade of the iron and the lug. Feed in some solder, get it fed in nicely. Plenty in there. Wipe with iron. And that's that completed. So we've got another finished bit of solder in there. So 2 lugs soldered on successfully. So they're going to be a great connection. There will be no problem when I put that to the actual unit. The Balan, which is the next stage. So, got a screwdriver hopefully in here. I'll just get a posi drive screwdriver for this Balan. So I've got the screwdriver in place. So now I can unscrew these connectors. Fairly tight, a bit tighter than what I expected. Do this without losing the locking washer. Place my connector on there. Leave it fairly loose for now. Do both sides. So yeah, I like the mounting system for the lugs so far on the Balan. It looks pretty good. Nice and neat. I'm not actually waterproofing this just at the minute, just in case I have to make any alterations to the lengths. I'll be doing that another time. I'll use some glue, hot glue gun, and blather everything up. So make sure you've got a good connection on that, nip down properly. Same with that one. Well, that's fully home, and so is that one. So we've got the Balan now connected up to the elements. All that's left to do on this now is put the cable ties on and make sure that these bits of wires don't come apart. So I'm going to use some very lightweight cable ties, and then this way then it's keeping the weight down of the antenna system. So I'm going to put a few on each. So that was the idea of putting the insulation tape there, just to hold the wires secure in position so that I can finalise it all with these cable ties, which is going to obviously be a lot better. So yeah, things are going quite nicely. I'm not sure whether we'll get it up today, hopefully we might. Just got to solder up some coax, put a couple of plugs on, and then I'll have a feeder, which is not much of a job. And then really there's no reason why we can't get the extension pole out. I use a 10-metre fiberglass pole to lift the antenna off a bracket, obviously at the top of the house, so I can easily get it up and down without too much difficulty. So you can see how easy this is. And obviously the cost of this antenna is very cheap, so I used a full drum, which were about £10 a wire, and then I used a bit of another one, so 20 quid's worth of wire, but I've still got best part of a drum left. And then I bought the Balan for I think about £39. So we've got, call it, we'll round it up to £40 plus another tenner, we'll call it 50 quid. £50 for a dual element, proper resonant dipole, fan dipole, with a 1-to-1 Balan. So not too bad. Obviously the previous one was free. I used existing wire, a second-hand dipole centre which I already had in stock, so that cost me nothing. And yes, there was nothing wrong with it. It worked really well, hence the reason for building this one. So that one had a mismatch of different types of wire for the elements. This one is all the same, so it's all correct impedance cable, so it'll be much better, and it's correct specification for elements rather than normal electrical circuits. So that's 4 of them. I'm just going to trim them up now. I'll probably put a couple more on, to be honest, but I'm just letting you have a look and see how we do it. So take care when trimming these cable ties off that you don't damage any of the elements that you've spent all that time getting it right. Don't want to be careless, and you could actually use a smaller pair of cutters. Probably got some in here. Yeah, I have. So common sense would say get the correct tools out, so we'll use the tools specially made for the job, which are these small side cutters. So yeah, I've virtually made this video in real time, so this is the kind of time length that we're talking about to make this antenna. So that's a finished product. All that's left to do now is to fit the feed line and get it up in the air, and that's the difficult part. I've got to mess about a bit, so catch you back in a little bit when I get to that stage. So here we have the finished article, completed, ready to install. Got the 40-metre elements already there with the connection, and the 40-metre element. That's the 80-metre one, sorry. Got 41 there as well. So them 2 elements there ready, and then obviously the 2 80-metre ones as well. So we've got the end result, the coax feeder, and the connections with the lug soldered, all the cable ties correctly fixed up, 3 on each wire, and that's pretty good. That's not going to pull, so quite happy with that job. It's fairly light, the cable's nice and light, the Balan's nice and light, so fingers crossed it'll be quite good. So got to get the old antenna down now, And that's it. It'll be the next bit of the video. We'll be operating on the new one. And so there we have the finished result in the sky, looking pretty nice. So the wires are spread nicely for the slight V below it and the flat top for 80, and the configuration goes down back in the original place, same as last time. As you can see, we've got a slight bit more, of an L, inverted L than a V, slightly dropped more angle at that one, as that one comes down, terminates at the bottom past the vertical, right at the bottom of the garden on that boom, and one terminates on that one there. So we've got one here for 40 metres, and then the 80 metre one is on top of that wooden boom there, right at the bottom. So good bit of height as it runs up and then goes up to the top of the house. That's the end result. We're pretty pleased with it. So all that's left to do now, of course, is to get on the radio and see whether or not we've got any improvement, or better still, make sure it hasn't got any worse. So I hope you've enjoyed the construction of the homemade 40/80 Fan Dipole with M0 YKS. Okay, the final test, the antenna's up in the air. I've had to adjust it slightly. We've got the resonant frequency on 80 down to 688, 101 SWR. It was 3.7 previously, so it's dropped down a little bit. However, it's 1.5 at the DX portion, so it's perfectly operable. I'll adjust it at a later date, so we'll get that sorted, and hopefully it'll receive okay. Still a bit of noise coming through, but it's early. I get a lot of noise at this time of night, so we'll try that out later. And we'll see what it's like. So let's just go up to 40 metres. So we're a little bit higher than what I wanted. We're on about 1.8. So I'll have to adjust that a little bit. It needs slightly shortening. So the adjustments that I put in place were just slightly too long. So I've cut a couple of pieces off already, and I'll be trimming it out throughout the week. So I'll take probably a couple of inches off either end, and we'll get it perfectly resonant on 40 metres, but it seems to be receiving nicely. So that's the vertical and the dipole. Not much noise difference there now. So hopefully, got a bit creeping in, but we'll find out later on in the evening when the band and everything's switched off. So that's it. That's the end of the video, guys. And yeah, thanks for watching us and being along with us. It's been quite a mission. Quite cold outside. I'm going to warm up now with the brew and play some radio. Catch you later. Thanks for watching and subscribing. Hope you enjoyed the 80/40 Fan Dipole build with M0 YKS. Bye for now. Be safe.